Hey guys, we did a nutrition seminar last Saturday, and we only had a couple of people attend, but I do know that some of you were unable to attend because of scheduling conflicts or whatever may have come up, and I thought I would do a video here going over some of our nutritional guidelines. First of all, I am not a doctor, but I do have 20 years of training under my belt, and about 15 of those years I was either personal training or coaching CrossFit. So much of what you see here are some of the guidelines that CrossFit puts out as far as nutrition, but then there's also some things that I have on this sheet that I just have found are good rules of thumb. They've worked for me and they've worked for countless clients that I've worked with. Up at the top, you'll see that I just kind of wrote a few things to start us off. Obviously, we have 24 hours in a day. Most of us are probably not working out every day for an hour. But even if we operated under the assumption that all of us were working out 7 days a week for at least an hour, and then if we're trying to get the recommended sleep, which would, 7 to 8 hours a day. The point that I'm trying to make is the vast majority of time throughout each day is not focused on what we're doing in the gym, which means sleep and then nutrition are incredibly important. If you're wanting to make changes to your body, if you're wanting to make training adaptations, the food that we eat is so important, and that is one of the reasons why we always ask you guys before class starts, how is your nutrition? So I want to call your attention to just a couple of things real quick on the screen. This part right here, macronutrient breakdown. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I want this to be relatively quick, but if you guys have any other further questions or deep dive stuff that you want me to go over, please ask. There are 3 primary macronutrients. They are proteins, carbs, and fats. And for the most part, protein is used for muscle building, carbohydrates are used for energy, and fat is used for hormone production. They're all very important, but as you can see, what your nutrition looks like depends on what your overall goal is. So I kind of have a couple of options here. Option 1, lose body fat or reduce overall body weight. The second one would be to lose body fat and increase lean muscle mass. And then the third one would be performance optimization and or like increasing your overall body weight. You can do all of these things. It's not like you have to pick one over the other. However, I would say if you have weight that you need to lose, if you have weight that you need to lose, you need to start with option 1 first. Okay? Option 2, this will happen in the process, but if you're somebody that needs to lose 20, 30, 40 plus pounds, I would highly recommend starting with option 1. So we want to be focusing, you'll see there's a lot of similarities here. Meats, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. And we classify starch as carbohydrates. So when we're talking about, little starch, some starch, okay, and then starch to fuel performance, we're talking about carbohydrates. And you can see that macronutrient breakdown right over here. Proteins per gram have 4 calories. Carbohydrates per gram have 4 calories. And then you can see that fats are the most nutritionally dense in terms of calories. They are 9 calories per gram. If you're wanting to know kind of how we classify carbohydrates, I tried to include this section down here. And then when we're talking about starch, that's what we're talking about. Vegetables and fruits, I would not classify those as starch. So up here at the top where it says meat, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, some fruit, little starch, some starch, starch to fuel performance, that's what I'm talking about, starchy carbohydrates. I tried to list some macro ratios. Like if your number one goal right now is to lose body weight, you need to be going with option one, which is going to give us about, if we're talking about total calorie consumption, about 45% of our total calorie consumption needs to come from protein, 20% needs to come from carbohydrates, and then about 35% of our total calorie intake needs to be coming from fats. And you'll notice once you go down here to option 2 and option 3, that changes. The carbohydrates increase a little bit, and then the carbohydrates increase even more when we're getting into performance. I want to stress this point because I've been working with people for a long time, and I constantly hear, either carbs are the enemy or carbs fuel performance. And I don't think it has to be an either or. However, I also know in my experience over the years that a lot of people are increasing their performance while keeping a high carbohydrate consumption, and they never actually get their body fat to where they want it to be. Okay, if you're more interested in looking good in a swimsuit, losing body weight and losing body fat, you need to manipulate the carbohydrate consumption. It's really hard to do both at the same time, which is why I recommend people who are really wanting to get body weight off or shed body fat, lose your weight, lose your body fat, get to where you want with your weight and your body fat, and then add carbohydrates back into the equation. Get to where you want to go first, and then we can talk about optimizing performance. Guys, if you're using CrossFit as your training methodology, okay, you're going to get stronger. You're going to add lean muscle mass. But we got to get the body weight and the body fat to where we want it to be before we, start talking about like I'm going to the CrossFit games. Okay? I also put this little section down here, which I think is super important. Fats do not make us fat. You got to get that out of your brain. In the 1980s and 1990s, there was a huge marketing campaign. Fat is bad, fat is bad, fat is bad, fat is what is making you fat. That is wrong. That's not just my opinion. The scientific literature now argues and supports the same thing. We are adding body weight and body fat to our frame because of the excessive consumption of pre-processed, pre-packaged carbohydrates. It's the sugar that we're eating that's going to be stored as fat. And remember, when we're talking about sugar, I'm not just talking about table sugar. I'm talking about starches. If your diet is high in bread, rice, potatoes, the likelihood that you're going to add body fat and add body weight is going to increase dramatically. Okay, so when we're talking about the macronutrients, we're talking about proteins, carbs, and fats. What are good fats to eat? What are good proteins to eat? And what are good carbohydrates to eat? I've listed them there for you. So like if you're, eating hot, something that's hot, something that you're cooking in a pan or something, you need to be focusing on coconut oil, grass-fed butter, ghee. All right, those are good cooking fats. Cold fats, okay, that would be like olive oil, sesame oil, nut oil, avocado oil. We want to be staying away from this stuff. This is no good. Margarine, hydrogenated oils, canola oil, corn oil, vegetable, soybean oil, sunflower oil. They do not have the good fats. We want the omega-3 fats, and these, the ones that I have in red here, those are not high in omega-3 fatty acids, which is what we want. Your protein comes next. Okay, I do not have enough money in my budget to eat all of the things that I have listed here. You kind of have to do it, adjust it for your budget expenses, but ideally we need to be focusing on free range or cage-free, non-GMO, wild-caught, grass-fed meat, fish, and eggs. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, I think that's kind of a conversation for another time, but if it breathes or bleeds or at some point would bleed or breathe, that's what I would consider protein. I would argue that you can have as many vegetables as you want, regardless of what your goals are. If you need to lose body fat and lose body weight, focus on vegetables. That's totally fine, okay? I listed some things there that would be ideas of good vegetables. There are plenty more, okay, but I don't have time to literally write out every single vegetable that you can eat. I've also tried to put, if we're talking about starches, okay, if you're gonna eat the potatoes, the rice, the bread, that kind of stuff, try to focus on those things. Sweet potatoes, yams, pumpkin, squash, carrots, white rice, quinoa. With the rice, okay, there's always this big debate between white rice and brown rice. With the rice, you need to get the slow cook rice. Okay, if you're eating you're like, I'm going to eat brown rice because it's healthier than white rice, but you're eating the fast cooked, like 5-minute brown rice, that is no healthier. In fact, I would argue that is worse than a slow cooked white rice. Same thing with the fruits, okay? If you're trying to lose body weight and body fat, I think eating fruits is totally appropriate. I would just try to have those more midday and then focus on the berries. Okay, fruit has fructose, which is sugar, but berries are much higher in fiber, so less of the fructose is going to get converted into sugar and stored as fat. There are plenty more fruits that you can eat. I just listed some there for you. Okay, we're going to keep going. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit because it ties directly in with the nutrition, okay? When you guys are trying to prep, you need to pick a day, okay? You need to pick a day, 1 or 2 days a week, where you set aside some time to meal prep, okay? Try to prep your lunches, especially if you don't work from home. I don't work from home, so I have to bring my stuff with me. But I would always make sure, if you're the typical 5 days a week, 40-hour work week, whatever, pick 1 day a week where you're trying to prep 5 lunches. 5 lunches. Get that out of the way, and then you don't have to worry about, going out to eat or eating something you probably shouldn't be eating. Meal prep your stuff. Try to get at least 5 servings if possible. When I talk about snacks, I think 3 meals a day is probably not enough. You need to be having some snacks, maybe 2 to 3 times per day. But what I would classify as a snack is probably closer to maybe what some of you guys would classify as a meal. Okay, but try to get some snacks. If you need to prep your snacks ahead of time, that's fine. If your snacks are going to be a protein bar or protein shake, that's fine as well. Try to prep those ahead. Okay, and then make sure that you are drinking plenty of water. Try to incorporate some salt and electrolytes around your training sessions. Okay, now I want to hit this real quick because there is another thing that we need to focus on, which is this part right here, macronutrient timing. For athletes primarily wanting to lose weight or body fat, you should try to avoid eating your carbohydrates, or remember, I classify those as starches. Okay, avoid eating carbohydrates real early in the morning and then late at night. Try to get your carbohydrate consumption in around your training. So like my lunch, my midday meal has a lot of carbohydrates in it, and then the snack that I eat right before I train, about an hour to hour and a half before I train, is also high in carbohydrates. Try to avoid those starchy carbs early on in the morning and late at night. If your goal is to lose body weight or body fat and you're having oatmeal or a granola bar for breakfast, you're going to find it really difficult to do that. Okay, try to focus on getting your proteins and your fats for breakfast and dinner, and then eat your carbohydrates in the middle of the day. Again, I am fully aware that you guys might have more questions. We can go into more depth later. If this was helpful for you and you guys want me to make another video, I will. We always get questions from people about supplements. Hey, what should I be spending my money on? My number one recommendation right here up at the top, okay, is real food. real food. I know people who regularly spend 100, 200, sometimes $300 a month on supplements. Guys, get your food on lockdown. Get your food on lockdown. You're going to save a ton of money, and you're going to be much more likely to achieve your results with real food than you are going to be with supplements. That's why we call them supplements. That means that in addition to. Okay? The only supplements that I take is protein. Okay? Protein and creatine. That's it. I don't spend a bunch of money on pre-workout. I don't spend a bunch of money on fancy carbohydrates that you're drinking in and around your training time. Get your real food, get your protein, get your creatine. Then if you have a bunch of leftover money, I wish I had a bunch of leftover money. I don't. If you have a bunch of money left over, then you can start dumping it into some other supplements. So first of all, you need to hit your daily protein goals. Okay, you need to eat your daily protein goals. Let's go back up here real quick. Let's see where I put it. Where did I put that? Here we go. Right up here. Okay, men, you guys need to be getting about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Women, you need to be shooting for, 0.75 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So like right now, my body weight is about 200 pounds. I need to be trying to get about 200 grams of protein a day. If you're cooking your chicken and your turkey and your beef and your eggs, it's going to be hard to get that. So I have to supplement with protein. I have to supplement. I'm not going to get there on my own, which also means I need to be buying some protein bars. I listed these in order of importance, okay? Because, again, we have a lot of people spending all this money on supplements, but they're not getting their protein goals hit, okay? Getting a whey or casein protein is ideal if you go to Supplement Superstore, which, by the way, the staff there is phenomenal, okay? If you go to Supplement Superstore, they're going to talk to you about a bunch of different types, styles, brands, production processes. Okay, some of that can be overwhelming, which is why it's nice to have those guys. But I'm just going to go out and say, get some whey protein or get some whey plus casein protein. Guys, the timing of that is not nearly as important as just getting enough of it. Okay, I do a carnivore protein. Gave you guys an example of that right here. This is the brand that I use. I've ruined my gut early on in my training career by consuming way too much milk and whey proteins. I can't do it. Okay, I would also argue that if you're doing like pea protein or rice protein, those kinds of things, you're not going to get the same branched chain amino acid profile as a whey protein or a beef isolate. Don't worry, it does not taste like ground up meat in a shake. Okay, the fewer the ingredients, the better. And name brand is definitely not needed. Read your labels. Fewer ingredients, the better. Name brand is not. Carnivore beef protein, that's a big one for me. And then I always put collagen in my coffee in the morning. Okay, you can do that in your coffee. You can do that in your tea, whatever your hot beverage of choice. This collagen protein, it does not have the same amino acid profile as like meat, okay, or whey, but it's going to help you increase your protein intake. So that's number one. Get those first. And then I would argue that every single person, male, female, old, young, athlete, or just everyday gym goer, you need to be getting creatine. Okay? Get some creatine monohydrate. All right? I literally go on Amazon. This is what I get. Okay? There are 100 servings, and it is way cheaper than getting a name brand creatine, guys. You don't need anything else besides creatine monohydrate. You don't need to load. You don't need to cycle. Okay, just try to get about 5 grams per day. With your bars, there are a million different types of protein bars. Okay, try to focus on the ones with as much whole food in as possible. I'm going to go back to that same thing that I mentioned with the protein powder, okay? The fewer the ingredients, the better. Try to avoid protein bars with a bunch of sugar or carbs in them, okay? Make sure that the protein listed on the bar is considerably higher than the carbohydrates listed on the bar. You got to be very, very careful because a lot of the bars that are on the market are meal replacement bars. Okay, you don't need a meal replacement bar. Use it in conjunction with healthy meats, not a replacement. Then maybe you could move on to something like a multivitamin. If you're not, okay, read this part here. If you're not eating salmon, mackerel, sardines, or like red meats, AKA if you're eating a bunch of chicken or turkey, you probably need to be getting a fish oil. Okay, and then last on the list, then maybe if you have some money left over, you could do like a pre-workout, but I would argue they are not necessary unless your desire to train is low. Okay? If you're missing the gym because you don't have energy, then we should probably get some type of pre-workout. All right, we already went over meal prep, drink plenty of water. When should you take your protein shakes? Okay, ideally around an hour post-training session. Okay, get those muscles repaired after you've broke them down. Okay, if you can't eat food in the morning, some people just can't actually eat breakfast. If you can't cook protein, then get your shake in the morning. Okay, and then I love getting some collagen in my coffee. Big recommendation, especially for people that are wanting to lose body fat or body weight. Try to get some early morning fasted cardio. So you're doing this on an empty stomach. I think you can still have your coffee. Okay, I think you can still have your coffee or your tea. All right, just make sure there's no sugar in it. You could still have your coffee with your collagen. Okay. But try to get some zone 2 aerobic training in the morning. If you can't get it in the morning, try to shoot around your midday meal or early in the evening. Try to get yourself about 20 to 30 minutes of cardio. This is how you find your zone 2. There's a math equation that you guys can figure out there to get to what your zone 2 is. Okay, that's your zone 2. If at all possible, try to incorporate some 10-minute walks after big meals. Okay, try to move a little bit. That's going to help you get the blood sugar out of your system. So you're going to eat your meal and then you're going to do a 10-minute walk, nice and easy, and that's going to get the sugar out of your blood. Much less likely that sugar is going to get stored as fat. And then guys, you have to be getting sleep every night. This is one, honestly speaking, is the one that I struggle with most. It's not that I'm staying up late. It's just that, as Americans, we're pretty busy. And I try to get to bed at night as early as I can. I'm not screwing around on my phone and watching a bunch of episodes of some show on Netflix. I'm trying to get to bed. Okay? But I also have to wake up relatively early in the morning to get to work, and I'm just not getting that. It is super important. Get your sleep. Okay? Get your sleep so you can reduce that stress hormone, cortisol, what makes it difficult to burn fat. Try to keep your bedroom cool or cold. Use blackout curtains if possible or shades, and then try to avoid your blue light before bed. Most of our cell phones now come with an option that allows you to remove the blue light from your phone. Okay, I have my phone set at 7 p.m. It kind of turns that weird like yellowish orange that's removing the blue light. And then I do not have it come back on until 7 a.m. But that's mainly because I'm up every day by 5:30 a.m. So I try to give myself some time in the morning without that blue light. Guys, if you have other questions, please feel free to ask. You can talk with me. You can talk with one of the coaches. I could make this video an hour long and still not cover everything that I wanted to cover, but I think it's important that our gym, our athletes, you guys know some of the basic nutritional guidelines that we recommend here at Share the Burden CrossFit.